Hello, 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 hello. This is episode 52, and today we're going to have fun. I'm intending to have fun. And the topics that are going to be covered are going to start with oneness so that we can embody and feel the truth of why we're here. We're either here because we embrace non-duality, which is simple meaning, and that means there aren't two, there's just one. There isn't the polarities. That's a made-up thing from this world. And if you're here and you're not a non-dual participant consciously, then you're a Course in Miracles student or teacher. And the oneness is part of that too, but you're looking at love and fear. You're looking at attack and oneness, giving up attack thoughts and being in the mind of God, which is just one, there's no separation. The Course and non-duality agree. There is only one problem, and that's a false belief. That belief that we are these separate entities. Now, let's just go first to the body, because that always comes up for everybody until it doesn't. And the best way that I think people can make peace with it, and I talk to a lot of people who are very uncomfortable and leave A Course in Miracles because of you're not a body, you're free, you're just as God created you. Well, non-duality says the same thing in essence, but we get to it a little differently. And so it's people fight within non-duality. I mean, anybody who has an ego is going to argue until you don't, and then you'll stop arguing. So it's just a question of what you argue with, what people argue with. And the way I've come to bring those two worlds together about the body is that if you tell people they're not a body, they're going to say, yes, I am, because now you're in the polarities. I feel like a body. I can't listen to anything else you have to say. I meet a lot of people who leave A Course in Miracles. What if we're really all saying you're more than your flesh, and your belief that you are your flesh and your small mind and your personality and your individual self, that's the only problem. You're way more powerful. You are what God is. So there really isn't an argument. It's just the wording and the individualness of the personality, if you will, the ego, that fights that. And most people listening are not in a fight with that. And yet we still go back to believing we are a body. So there is a fight going on. Maybe it's not a fight, but a rejection of the truth that we're everything. And like I've said before, quantum physics says exactly this: you are just energy, and so am I. And energy means not a solid, limited, material self. Okay, well, we're never going to settle it with words here, so that's just a beginning take. And then I want to go to both chapter 13 in the text and separate comments, which I hope to bring together in text 18. And let's start with text 18. I want to go to paragraph section 4, Paragraph 4. The holy instant does not come from your little willingness alone. It is always the result of your willingness combined with the unlimited power of God's will. Now here, the wording differs, and in many places, the Course alludes to there is only one will. There's not your will and God's will. But the Course meets us where we are, and we do have that false belief because we think we're separate, which is the only problem we have. If we're separate, we're going to have a separate will, we're going to have a separate body. They just go in a package. But non-duality says your will is God's will. Now, it doesn't mean what I want is what I'm going to have. What I want is a function of my thinking separate mind. I might want a Mercedes, or if you're a guy, you want maybe a truck, or a new piece of equipment for whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter what you want. What you want is a function of the personality and the separate self. So what if we talked about our will, not what we want, what we prefer and what we don't prefer, which is what we talked about last week. Resistance and preferences. But what if we talk about our movements, what we actually do? How many times have you done something that isn't what you said you wanted to do? Like you said this to someone and you vowed not to speak of that, or you ate this when you weren't going to eat that, or you promised you were not going to have attack thoughts toward this person and they got under your skin. Non-duality, everything in this even imagined world is of God. Everything. So there is no separation. This is the play world of the one spirit, the one being, the oneness. Everything. It's more like the Eastern religions that say this is God's world playing. But even God's world and you, that still makes two. So let's just go back to oneness. Oneness, when do we experience oneness? Let's go from our actual experience. So we're not just talking concepts in our heads. Think of before you fell asleep, last night, any night. You're not asleep yet, but you're not awake. There's no conflict. If there's conflict, you're heading toward being awake, you're not asleep. You go to the oneness to sleep. And then you have dreams. There's stories that happen in your dream. And when you're dreaming them, they seem completely real. So people want to say, don't tell me I'm not a body. I feel like a body. I know I'm a body. Well, in your dreams, you feel like everything's real. And then you wake up. So let's play with this as though we might be daydreaming. Just might. Just to put a little hole and let us play with there's nothing wrong with this world. But you say there's injustice. There's the Ukraine, there's the Russia, there's this, there's that. Yes and no. There will, as long as there is a world, there'll be these polarities, justice and injustice, up and down. You throw a ball, it's not going to just stay up, it's going to go down. We're going to have divisions. That is what this world is made of. But do we want to know another world? So right here in chapter 18, in section 4, let's see, it says, it's impossible to make arrogant preparations for holiness and not believe that it's up to you to establish the conditions of peace. That's really great. I love that they call it arrogant. That's what we do all the time, right? We're trying to control our world. We're trying to make plans. We have goals. We have intentions. We have wishes. And we have resistance, manifestations, people. That's so attractive in this world. If you can make things happen, you will have followers. This is the ego. Let's not fool ourselves. This is the separate self. But this is so great. Number 5 says God has established them. What has he established? He has established the conditions for peace. Let's take it a little further. If God can establish the conditions of peace, and God is not a person in the sky, and God is not separate, then everything, to my logic, is established by the one being, in the sense of the one life. The weather is established not by a man in the sky with a beard. It's established by life. If we want to call life God, then it's established by God. It says here, the conditions for peace do not wait upon your willingness to what they are, for what they are. Your willingness is needed only to make it possible to teach you what they are. And what do you think they really are? Yes, the course is brilliant on helping you see your attack thoughts. You've got to stop your attack thoughts. Why? Well, the course says you won't be at peace. You can't be a provider for miracles. You can't receive miracles. But basically, you could make it even simpler and say, you're setting up dualities. If you are trying to control things, you are judging people, you're separating yourself, you're falling more deeply back into a false belief. Why does it matter what you believe? I think this is the most important thing I'm going to say. Why does it matter if you believe in separation? You seem to be able to get an Alfa Romeo. You know, who got it? You did. You got the money, you got the car, whatever it is you want. If it's an apartment, if it's a rental, it doesn't matter what the subject is. It seems like it's what you want. Now, the bottom line is, does separation bring suffering? And does oneness bring peace and freedom? One set of beliefs seems to bring on pain. Well, you say, I got the Alfa Romeo, I was so happy, or I got an A on all my tests, or whatever stage or interest you have. but how temporary is it? You're going to want something else. Perhaps if you've wanted an Alfa Romeo all your life, I don't even know what it looks like. I don't know what it costs. I know it's expensive. I know some people love fancy cars. But if you wanted it a long time, you might have a high for a long time. But then you're going to need more proof of your worth with another symbol. What's it going to be next? I mean, that if we're honest, there is always something replacing that goal, replacing that need, if it's a thing in this world. It'll be a new thing. So that's the reason to maybe be interested in stepping out of the opposites. So one of our favorite opposites, polarities, is unworthiness, imagined unworthiness. That's what I'm calling shame. I've brought this up before. So when you're the greatest and you've achieved everything and you got all A's, that's the flip opposite. You got the contract, you got the job, you got the gal, you got the guy, you got the apartment, but you're right in the middle. How soon is it going to be the despair of what you didn't get? That's how polarities work. It's so important that we have that realization. What else does it tell us here? If you maintain you are unworthy of learning, this is you are interfering with the lesson by believing that you must make the learner different. You did not make the learner, nor can you make him different. Would you first make a miracle yourself and then expect one to be made for you? I love this. In preparing for the holy instant, and the holy instant is now, and it takes you completely out of past and future. It says, do not attempt to make yourself holy to be ready to receive it. Isn't that what we do in this world when we're trying to improve ourselves, when we try to fix ourselves, when we feel like we're sinners? The Course is really clear that if you think you're a sinner, you're not going to receive a miracle, and you're not going to give a miracle. It says something funny here. Right after it says, in preparing for the holy instant, do not attempt to make yourself holy to be ready to receive it. Then it says, that is but to confuse your role with God's. Atonement cannot come to those who think that they are first must atone, but only to those who offer it nothing more than simple willingness to make way for it. So what if we took it all the way and said, none of these things are our jobs. We are the instruments of life. We are the embodiment of life. Our goal is to just be that, to allow, to not take ownership, to not pretend we're a separate being, to not pretend we're an ego, to not be a separate self, and just allow life to be lived through us. That's the oneness. And that is a miracle. That is the biggest miracle. And then there's none of this, who shall I give a miracle to and who shall I withhold it from? You are not the bestower. Life is the miracle. And it's a miracle if we allow it. Wow, that's bringing this all into non-duality to me. And chapter 13 in the text says, the present offers your brothers in the light that would unite you with them and free you from the past. Would you then hold the past against them? For if you do, you are choosing to remain in the darkness that is not there. So there's only the light. Only in this play world of duality is there light and dark. Because if everything is acceptable, then there's no light and dark. Refusing to accept the light that is offered you. So you're choosing sometimes you're choosing to play in the make-believe. You're choosing to believe you're separate. You're choosing to believe you control everything. Number 4 in text 13, paragraph 7. The light of perfect vision is freely given as it is freely received and can be accepted without limit. That is the same with, if you take away the volition, the choosing, the allowing, the person in control, and if you just see it the way non-duality does and say, light and dark just move through us, because it says here, the light is freely given and accepted. It just moves. And even dark, if it's not labeled as dark and wrong, it's just the coloration of what it is. I want to talk about this beginning here. I want to go to judgment, because that is what hurts us. The oneness and A Course in Miracles both say you cement yourself in your erroneous belief if you are going to judge, because it means you're separate. It means they did this and that, and you are innocent. You don't. So I had somebody rank on their cousin because she mentioned something in passing that she thought was innocent. And the cousin said, that was not your story to tell. And then the cousin went on to tell me about everybody else's business. So she was telling me much more intimate details than her cousin had, but with complete innocence. And how do we all do that? How do we not see that we are doing exactly what we're ranking on the other person for doing, but they do it a different way? So usually this was pretty close to the same way, but usually the form is a whole lot different. Like somebody, let's see, let's think of something. What have I recently heard? Someone judge. Oh, okay. So in a marriage, someone wants to be loved exactly as they are. And her complaint is, I never do things enough right for him. And wouldn't you know it, she has the very same complaints. The she and the he, they have the same complaints, but one does everything the other wants in order to be loved. And wants to not be asked to do that, they do everything. Does that make any sense? They're an accommodator, and their vision of being loved is that they wouldn't be asked to accommodate, even though they accommodate and they appear to do that. The other one gets it all her way. She wants to be loved for getting it her way and not asked to be different when the accommodator stops wanting to accommodate. So they're both wanting the same thing. They're both wanting to be loved, doing everything they do, just not be judged for it. But they act in opposite ways. One is the accommodator, and one gets their way all the time. So can you see how each of them is judging the other, feeling like the victim and innocent? They both want the same thing. They want to be loved without exception, without needing to change. And each of them wants the other to change and stop being judged themselves, but they want to go on judging. Is that clear? I hope it is. But if you would be willing to just play with this in your life, because I know ACIM students are very willing to look at their judgments, ask yourself, in what form? It might look different. Maybe I never get everything I want. Yeah, so I don't do the same thing. But how am I the same as the person I'm judging? How do I do it? Where do I do it? In another way. Look for another way, otherwise you won't see it. That's the reason we can fool ourselves, is the form looks different. But when we just see, oh, these are just blocks to love, which the Course is so good at. The Course is so brilliant by showing us not only is our only problem our belief in separation, but the way we do it is our blocks to love. So let's take a moment now and play. I promised we would play a little bit, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but let me just set us up. Let's play that we are actually God. Of course, we don't know what that would be, because God is not a separate entity. God is not a being. God is not a man or a woman. But let's just imagine that we're this endless energy, an energy that doesn't begin and doesn't end. And there are these forms all over. There are different forms. There are plants, there are trees, and there are these human beings. And the human beings are rejecting the energy. They take the oxygen, but then they say, oh no, I don't want to be what you are. I don't want to be the embodiment of life. They want to be special. They want to be separate. They want to be distinct, even if they're the worst of the worst and the best of the best. Can you see ourselves in this? And can we just let go and allow ourselves the experience of oneness? We are oneness. Oneness is us. There's no place we end. Now, a block to love is, oh yeah, I end at my body. That's just a block to love. Nothing wrong. Doesn't make you less worthy. Doesn't make you unspiritual. If you say, well, I feel separate, well, so do you feel separate in your dreams. You can't know for sure. When you imagine something in your distance and you think it's one thing and it turns out to be another, so you thought it, so you felt it in your perception, so your eyes perceived it, but that doesn't make it true. You saw something in the road and it turned out to be garbage, not an animal. So let's not hold on to our thoughts and our feelings, our perceptions, and our sensations. And maybe just for fun, let's keep on envisioning that we are the experience of God. We are this oneness. Bye for today. See you soon.